and welcome to this week's episode of OffSet Out of the Box. My name is Nush Lewis. Out of the Box is an interview series where we interview some of the most interesting music educators who are doing things differently and essentially thinking out of the box. Our guest this week is the very accomplished Rudy David. A lot of you may know him from one of India's earliest indie rock bands, Thermal and a Quarter. Apart from being a performing artist, he is also a songwriter and composer, has worked with the likes of Dr. L. Subramaniam, Lucky Ali, and Raghu Dixit, to name a few. He was also the creative director at the Jazz Theatre at Windmills in Bangalore. In 2007, he created two unique sound intervention solutions called Humdrum and Rudiments of Music, which is exactly why we got him on this episode. Welcome, Rudy, and thank you for making time out for us.
Thanks, Nash. Happy to be here and happy to share.
Awesome. Okay, so tell me, what inspired you to go from composing and performing with some of the best names in the business to music education?
I think it's been a parallel because I didn't go from one to the other. That still continues. I still work with whoever will work with me and whoever I'm open to working with. That's been a good trip. It's been a dream run, and 20 years or something of that it's been good as an artist. I've traveled around the world. I've played all the kinds of music I wanted to, but it's always been a learning process. And I've never considered myself so much of a teacher as much as a learner. And when I came across Sidhu, and that's one of the kids that introduced me to autism and terms like neurodiverse and like things that they use, which are basically learning difficulties with speaking. And in parallel, I've been studying about things like where the origins of language and math come from music. If you look at Samaveda, for instance, it has the origins of language itself in music, coming from bird calls, coming from things around us. And working with kids, these kids in particular, I tried using my whatever experience of music to teach them. I found I couldn't. You had to, each one is an individual, and you had to figure out how best to teach them, how best. And then it worked. It dawned on me that instead of teaching them, I could learn from them. And that's what Sidhu taught me. In his more non-verbal way of drumming with two fingers or one finger,
wow,
that you can, maybe you can't teach me, but you can try learning from me. And that's flipped it around for me. And I started learning from them. And from him and his extended family of autists and kids that I've come to know, I learn from them. And I learned each one teaches me something brilliant. And that's I found more empowering than anything else I've done on stage. Yeah. And that really charges me, even if it's like a 15-minute session that I do. And now online, which I never thought I would do. It was something that the whole education thing started out with drum circles, because I'd worked with drum jam folks, Roberto and Vasundhara. And that was an engaging process. We would do it for corporates and stuff like that, huge things, but they were one-offs.
Yeah.
And we would find people were really charged with it. But then I explored that area more and found that this is a good way to get community music going. And so the school that we started doing these workshops with were community drum circles, where the kids were not given any instruction. There was no verbal. You couldn't give them any instruction anyway, even if you wanted to. But you could put out drums, and when you put drums out in a circle, they start playing. And then you have to figure out how to stop them playing, because they can go on for hours together.
Yeah,
and
I know that.
These would be like 45-minute sessions. And we'd find them, even the most unwilling ones would slowly start creeping into the circle and doing something. And as a facilitator, my job would be to find those little ones and get them to become leaders.
Yeah.
And as soon as that spark came on, that they'd see that, oh, I'm doing something. And it might not have been anything big. It might have been something as simple as using this or just doing this. And then the whole crowd would be just doing this.
Yeah.
And it would be like an ocean of the sound.
Yes.
And these drums, I developed them basically because the kids had certain frequency ranges that I found that they would melt down if you use the djembe in that class. And more than 3 djembes in a room would be like too loud for anybody to handle.
Yes.
So I ended up developing these things out of completely recycled materials, stuff you can get in a hardware store. So like a sofa cover with cable ties.
Wow.
And different materials like packing material inside.
Yeah.
So, and the idea was to keep the frequency low.
Yes.
It's like a frame drum, but at the same time you could manipulate the tone by a pressure here, and you could hum along, and that's where humdrum came from. The idea of so we could have 20 of these in a small room, and it won't be loud, but it will be meditative. You'll get a low whoa 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 happening on the floor level.
And I'm sure, like, for children who are sensitive to sounds and hypersensitive to sounds and frequencies, this really probably works in that favor, where no one is getting overstimulated or anything.
It came from them. It came from the kids, really, because and for one thing, a lot of the kids I work with are from the underprivileged section, so they don't have access. They can't spend 5,000-10,000 rupees on a drum.
Yeah.
So the idea was to also teach them how to make these drums and make it easily affordable and easily storable. So they actually fit one into the other, and you can store them quite easily. You can have 20 drums in a corner, whereas 20 of the regular drums would cost a lot and would be difficult to store. Besides, they wouldn't use it because they didn't like that sound. The tone that came through was the difficult one. It is the djembes are particularly, and all the percussion instruments are meant to amplify.
Yes.
They're meant to be louder. They're meant to take it louder. But then I had to figure out a way to make them softer. And so these are like, you can play them inward. Like you hold them to your chest and play, and you feel the vibration inward.
Yeah.
And it's just a hand thing. It's very easy on the hands. It doesn't hurt. That kind of thing. So from the drum circles, it evolved into a form of just finding out what these codes were. And they were as simple as this. So I'll show you samples of this.
Yes.
It's just little lines of code that we started making.
Yes.
You can see it's code for the gray boxes are where you don't play.
Correct.
The white ones are for the right and left hand. So we evolved a form of balancing, doing right-left patterns, and leaving out. So the space bar, the importance of the space bar on your keyboard, defining sound by those spaces, and understanding the code of language from that via the hands, because a lot of them are non-verbal. Those that could make sounds would make ah, and then discovering what is the first word, what could be the first word. Coming from the air that we breathe, and I know Vasundhara spoke about this thing about the air and how that is a source. I mean, the source of emotion, language, and so that's been a discovery in itself, using this balancing technique. So using right, left, then introducing sounds like tha, then punctuating it into a tha, taka, takita, takadimi. So using the Western system, using the Indian system as well. So another bit I'll show you is we eventually get them to being able to read something like this. So there's no actual lines of pitch, but it's all just percussion. And looking at sounds like this. So you can already read a tha, 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 taka, 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 taka. So that's the code. A tha and a taka put on a line of counting in fours and being able to read it off. And almost immediately you can see some of the kids drawing stuff like this. Like in the spec of 10-15 minutes, they can read tha, 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 taka, 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 and then assigns for space. So it's just about 4 or 5 symbols. We don't introduce pitch. It's just about drumming and learning to code the difference between a 1 and a 0, and a 1, 2, and a 0. So 1 and 0s. Then the binary system, which is 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. That's our computer code. But it all connects up, and we have a lot of fun. And the learning experience for me has been great. And I found that
I wanted to actually ask you, did you decide on doing this with the drum just because it's and especially the one that you've created, is that because it's easier to play rather than giving them like, say, you know, I don't know, a keyboard or like a guitar or something like that? This is just, it's more accessible.
It's more accessible. A lot of kids don't even have the drum now, and they use a table, or they use a book or a box,
Yeah.
and that's enough, because you don't really need a drum. You need to be able to get this idea of time, and the whole book itself. I mean, that's what it's called. It's called time.
Yes.
And this book itself was designed by one of the high functioning kids who got into illustration, and it's his effort more than mine. There's no author to it, but rudiments of music is a common term. And volume 1, it's only about rhythm. So my name has got into there. Rudiments. Okay.
No,
but it's the effort of a lot of and it's a method of practicing more than anything else. It's a method of doing this, and that's all we ask. We ask you to do 15 minutes a day, every day. And the idea of having 2 drums is that a parent and kid can have this conversation at home. And you asked me about why the drum. Drumming, if you look at it, is the first language. It is acknowledged as the first language. If you look at even tribal nations like in old Africa and Red Indians and stuff like that, you have drumming as a core culture, and from that comes movement and then voice and all of that layered over it. But once you understand that value of, okay, you can play and then measure it, you can start measuring sound by playing and not playing that same space bar value. You find that we are defined by the spaces around us, not by the things we are. Not, and that's really a big discovery. And for these kids, the difference between an and an and then making that an or an amma. So you have to ask yourself, what was your first word? And then the bigger question would have been, what could have been the first word ever for this planet? You know, you're talking about 5,000 years or something of evolution of language. It's only 5,000 years. It's not 5 to 10,000. Maybe we can't measure that accurately. But you count from the birds and that coo or a ka sound, and babies do that. They imitate. So we use that. We use that imitation technique of learning from the kids. If they're able to play a rhythm, can the parent reflect that? Usually it's the kid is drumming away, but the parent saying, can he stop that? I mean, he's got a natural thing of doing this, you know, it's stemming. But if he put that hand on a tabla, it will actually make sense. But they're trying to shut him up and say, can you get him to speak instead? I said, don't stop that stemming. That stemming is really important.
Yes.
Stemming or whatever they call it. I mean, I'm not good with the terms. But I can recognize rhythm when I see it. And that as a musician, it's natural to me. And actually, but a lot of the parents can't do that.
How I would look at it is the child doing that is that's his way of communicating. He probably, I mean, he's not going to speak and he probably doesn't want to, and that's his way. So I think it's just, I think it's nice to accept that over like being able to say something. No, of course.
No, and we find that now, especially over this last couple of months, I found through this medium, I'm able to connect, because it's all one-on-one, and the kids are able now to use this medium to sit with me and drum across. And I get the parents to sit in as well, because this course is meant for parents. It's designed for parents, especially parents who think they're non-musical. And I give them a sense of how to do this code and see that it's actually quite simple. In the span of like 15 minutes or a half an hour workshop, they all know how to read and write at least the Taka business that I showed you. It's not complex music.
Which is the basis of all music that we learn. So, so
some of them now evolved to putting that Taka on a keyboard and using like 2 fingers, or instead of going from gross movement to fine motor movement, and then using all fingers. Some of them have keyboards lying around. Some of them have xylophones. So then the pitch comes in, and they're able to code with pitch, and immediately you can see the light go on in their faces when they realize, oh, I'm actually making a tune, or this is a tune I know, but this is what it looks like on the sheet, and I can measure it now. And we use metronomes, we use all that kind of thing to try and get the measure going.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to also talk about the app that you developed. That was the Humdrum app, which basically aids lesson. That's what I understood.
Yes.
I downloaded it today, and I must say, it not only has concepts that are broken down so well, like you showed me in the book, where everything it's extremely visual. Was the app a part of the initial plan, or is that something that you all decided to develop on the way?
The app is still a work in progress. You can see it's very basic. It's just the book,
Yes.
With a little metronome tied in at the bottom. And the metronome is different in the sense that it has only 4 speeds. So it has 80, 100, 120, and 60. And these are the speeds that we try to engage them. And it stops after 16 counts. It doesn't go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the option of sitting it, and it guides you through each line on the book.
Yeah.
So it'll take you to the end of the line and stop. And the idea of it is you can use a regular metronome. You can use the old wind-up one if you have one.
Yeah.
And I use that also. I use the old.
I have the old one there.
Yeah. I use that, and I use that at my workshops, and I get parents also to use it because it's a tactile thing.
Yes.
And this whole app is still a work in progress. I've started doing interpretation of the lines, like with me actually doing it on a video. So the kids can look at it and play along. So I don't have to be there. One of the things was, how can I share this? How can I get others to know what I'm doing, or share my learning with them? And the app came about. So it's developed with a friend who's just doing it because he can. And we're slowly figuring it out. We didn't have a fixed plan, but I knew the book was a structure. So we had to put it in there. And now we're trying to redevelop it and say, how can we animate those lines to make it more accurate, make it more interactive, and actually get the job done. It's not working perfectly right now, but it is effective enough.
Honestly,
a lot of the kids
it is a
use
great place to start with. Like, I love what I saw, and like you said, it's so basic, but just I loved how everything was just broken down. There was not too much written about anything. And it was just very, like, we were going step by step through the whole concept, which I loved. It was, I also want to ask you about when you all integrated this program specifically for adults and children of special needs. What has been the reaction from, like, special needs educators and therapists who you work with?
So I think it started out with a couple of schools in Chennai, and now in Kochi and a few over here. There must be about 18, 20 schools that are running this program over the last 3-4 years that it's been developed. And it's all been positive because a lot of the teachers and parents and everybody's included in these workshops, and the owners. Owners are usually parents who didn't have another school, so they started one. And a lot of them are not trained. A lot of the social workers also are not trained, and definitely not in music. And it comes across to them that it's so easy. I don't have to know music. I don't have to be a musician to do this.
Yes.
And it's just counting in 4s. I know how to count up to 4. I know to beat my hands together. I know to make a sound. Tha, I can do taka. Then I can do din. I can do da. Okay, that's enough. And then I can read and write music already in the span of about 2-day workshop, which is about 2 hours each day. They all learn how to read and write music, and music at the level of this, at what they need to. They're not yet applying it to a piano or a guitar or something complex like that, but they can. And the reaction has been amazing because I told you, like, it's for the parents, it's for the teachers. This whole workshop thing is for them. A lot of the kids won't be able to analyze it or read it. True. Some of them do, and some of them get down to doing it. They start off with just pacing themselves through beating on a drum, and then slowly introduce a tha. And then I try to get them to see something on the book that they can relate to. Some of them that can read, start reading OffSet. I've got a few kids now who are playing piano based on this program, meaning they've come from just drumming and reading, and now they're playing both hands. That means simple things, simple tunes, but playing both hands and reading 2 lines, which is a lot.
That's a lot. No.
And the parents are amazed because one thing it does, the metronome does is slow them down. A lot of them don't have this sense of time.
Yes.
And time is where the memory is sitting, really.
Yeah.
Time and the use of the space and the ability to speak very fast or speak slow with pause.
Yes.
And that they get. And so I know parents who now use this, tell the kid, speak at 80 beats per minute. Okay. So they understand. The kid says, okay, I'm going too fast. You're speaking at 120 plus.
Yes.
Bring it down to 80, bring it down to 60, and the kid gets it. And he's able to slow down. Another thing they do, a lot of them have this stuttering, like a da-da-da-da-da-da-da, which goes on like that. So we take it from there with the da-da-da-da-da-da on the drum and slow it down, like a da-da-da-da, and then give it the pause. So a da-da-da, da-da, da-da is immediately a word, or a dada, or a mama, or something like that. So language, we are discovering what
it's
their language is.
Being helped to develop, Yeah,
and it's we have to understand their language first. A lot of them have a didgeridoo kind of sound, which is like a whoa, 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 or like that kind of sound. So we need to get in there and do that with them, see how it feels to experience that sound, and then how can we connect it back to something that I know, or which might be beneficial to him to know.
Of course.
So it's evolving still. It's a long process, but it's been a good 5-7 years in developing this whole thing.
I'm sure. I mean, none of this is like, it never happens overnight. These things are things that take a good amount of time, a good amount of research. And you've also got to be lucky to work with like the right minded people. So.
Oh yeah, like parents are open to trying this also because they don't have many options. There aren't too many musicians who come out and say, yeah, we're ready to do this, or we know how to do this.
Yes.
I didn't say I know how to do it because I didn't. I had to figure it out, but I had the time, and I put in the time, and I had the parents who were ready to work with me. I had teachers and facilitators, psychologists, all who were able to support what I was trying to do and help it grow. So it's not just me. It's been a lot of effort of a lot of people.
I'm sure. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Rudy, for sharing your insights. And it was such a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Nash. Happy to be here and happy to share. I'm all the best with what you're doing. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you out there.
Thank you. And for everyone watching, thank you for joining us. And remember to like, share, and subscribe.